Okay, hopefully this works. I'll share on Twitter. I think I'm live now. Wonder if I can get the. See if I can post a link here. All right. All right. Let's get started. I'm going to share my screen, and then we'll go. Entire screen. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So I think I'm sharing my screen now, and I think I'm live. So I'm going to close some tabs. Okay. Today, I thought it would be fun to play around a little bit with some new features that I'm working on in React lately and that our team's working on, and see how they sort of all fit together. So for anyone that's missed it, I've been working a bit lately on an RFC for Profiler API for React. I'll go ahead and post links to all of this stuff in the description of the live stream when it's ended, but that's what we're going to sort of play with today. And I've been building some DevTools on top of it. So let's just do a little bit of live coding, and hopefully this will work out well. I'm going to use create React app to get us off the ground. And then we'll build a little app together, and we'll see how we can profile it with the new profiler and how we can use it with suspense, and hopefully make something kind of neat by the end of it. So I'm going to seems like something, maybe just the live stream is making my computer a little slow. Yeah, it's Chrome. Awesome. This is the first time I've ever live streamed, so if it's awkward, I apologize. Cool. So let's go ahead and commit everything. Awesome. The first thing I'm going to do before I continue is install some local modules. I'm running master of React. Actually, I'm running a branch of React that has a new interactions tracking package that I'm working on, but I'm going to go ahead and install that into my checkout here so that we can play with some features that haven't been released yet. Okay, so I'm going to add React and a new interaction tracking package. All right, cool. So if we diff our package file, we should see some local packages. Awesome. Local build of React. You can see I've done this a little bit in the past. Cool. Now I'm going to start up our create React app. And I'll have another tab over here that's also in the folder. Cool. So this is just a basic app. And I'm going to open DevTools, and we'll see that there's a profiler tab, which means we're running my new local build of React that has the profiling capabilities. Awesome. So let's make something basic that we can play with. So this is all the default project that comes with Create React App. So we're just going to work with that. So first off, I have a sort of something in mind that I want to build. It's not going to be very pretty, but it'll sort of show off a couple of different features. So I'm just going to start building towards this goal. But the idea is I want a button that when I click it, it's going to load some data, and then we can display some data. And then we'll start profiling that. So I'm going to add some state to my app here. And let's say is initialized false. And then here we'll say if this.state that is initialized, and return a button. Otherwise, we'll return, for now, we'll just return loading. Cool. And then I'm going to add a handler. Update state, and then hopefully we've now got a button, and we click it, we reload. Okay. So the first thing we'll do is just test that the profiler is hooked up and working. So I'm going to start profiling, and I'm going to click this button, and now I'll stop profiling, and we can see that, yeah, the app re-rendered once when I set the initialization state to true. So far, so good. Now we're going to try to plug in suspense, which is an API that I guess Andrew mostly has been working on. It's in sort of a bit of an unstable state, getting closer to something that we can publish, but we're going to use some unstable APIs in the next part of the demo just to play with things. And I haven't played with suspense at all. So we're going to kind of learn this together. So I think the way things are working currently, based on poking around a little bit in the repo, in the React repo, is that we're going to use two functions from this that pertain to suspense, one of which will create a cache, and another one will create a resource. And for this demo, I'm going to actually just use a API online. It's kind of a dummy API that gives us just random user data. So I'm going to make a function here called fetch user list. And this function will just return a promise that loads this data. And that's it. Okay, and now I actually need to turn to look at how this works. Suspense test in the React repo, because I'm a little uncertain. Okay, so create resource takes a function that loads the resource. Awesome. Okay, so back over here, we're going to create a resource. We're going to call it user list resource, and it looks like that takes a function that's responsible for returning a promise. So in our initial case, we're just going to pass it fetch user list function. And then we'll also make a user list component. And this is going to return a list of users. So we're going to have users. We're going to map them to list items. And I think users, if we look back over here, users have an ID and a name. So we'll just use that. So we'll say our key for our array of things here is an ID. And then inside we'll show user.name. And the way suspense works is we'll just use this resource we created right within our render function. So we'll say, give me users, and you do that by calling read on a resource and passing it cache. I think that's the way our tests are using it. Yeah, pass it cache and some additional props if you want, but our thing is hard coded, so we'll just pass it. And maybe this, oh yeah, also I have to do this. So I'll render the user list and see what happens. Nothing. Awesome. So something broke. The above error occurred in your user list. Error was suspended. Great. Yes. So the way that suspense works is that you have to wrap async requests that you make in line like this in a placeholder. And a placeholder will render if your resource takes too long to load, the placeholder will render instead of it. So for our purposes, we will, it'll render a fallback, so a loading thing. So we'll say we'll make a simple fallback component. And it'll just say loading. Try again. Yeah, so we need to make it a, so let's try one more time, and now we should see, great. So this is already pretty cool. We'll go ahead and profile and see what we have here. But we got a button, we can click it, and it'll load a list and render. And you see we got a couple of renders. The first one is when we click the button, and that makes the loading state. The next one is when our fallback component is added. And then the third one is when the user list is added. This is neat because we're using suspense in a synchronous app. So we didn't have to do anything fancy to handle the fact that suspense was an async operation. React just synchronously committed our fallback component, so the thing that says loading, it waited for the promise to resolve in the background, our fetch promise, and then it rendered a list. So this is neat, but I think it's neater if we show what's happening async. And so to do this, we're going to use the first of our unstable APIs, and that is unstable create root. And this is the way that we're gonna make our application itself async entirely. And we're also going to, how should we do this? We're also going to make our fetch user list request take longer. It's pretty quick right now. So we'll say a new function, fetch user list with delay. This will return a promise. And then in the promise, we will set timeout. And we'll set it for, let's say, 2 seconds. And then in here, we will say fetch user list that then resolve, I guess. Okay. And we'll change our resource to use our delay decorated thing. Talking and typing at the same time is hard. All right, so now we click it and we wait 2 seconds and we get our data back. And that looks like it worked more or less like we would expect. But you'll notice that the placeholder is showing up right away. And then we wait 2 seconds and get our data. So we can actually also tell the placeholder, wait a second in this case before you show up. And I think we do that with a delay milliseconds prop. And I think we also need to do one additional thing, which is when we have our set state here, we need to break it down into a synchronous set state and an async, so a high and a low priority set state. So what we want basically is, as soon as we click this button, this initialize button, we want some feedback, and I just realized I spelled initialize wrong. We want some feedback to the user that the button's been clicked. And then we want React to have some time to do the suspense stuff before it actually renders a placeholder. So the way that we do that, we'll break our state into two parts. We'll say, I don't know. This is the error name, but let's call it disable button. So in this case, we're going to say, we'll say, let's change our UI a little bit. We'll render the user list only once we've been initialized. Maybe we'll name this something better, like load show user list. And then we'll also state disable button. We'll also disable our button to give some immediate feedback. So I think the way that we do this in React is, well, we're still working on it. We don't have a finalized API, but we do have an unstable API, so we'll use that. So first off, we want to immediately set sort of a high priority update to disable the button. So this will give some feedback to the user that the button's been clicked. And then we'll use something called unstable deferred updates. I believe this is what it's called. Let me double check the React repo. Unstable deferred. No. Oh, I'm not typing. It's unstable, not unstable. Unstable. There we go. This comes from React DOM, so we'll import it from DOM. And down here, we'll say unstable deferred updates. And this is when we'll do our other set state to show user list. Okay, maybe. Let's try it and see. I probably made a mistake. So we click the button, it's disabled, takes a second, shows loading, and then a second later, cool. Great. Okay, I think I could change it slightly, but that we basically have the idea. So we wait 1 second before we show the placeholder, and then we wait another second because of this 2-second delay before the list loads in. So this gives us some async time built into our app. So now we're going to use the thing that I wanted to play with all along, which was this new interaction PR I've been working on for interaction tracking. And you can see it over in the React repo if you want. It's one of the many PRs that are open. Yeah, here we go. So the idea with interaction tracking is that you might want to mark certain interactions as special in your application and let React's profiler track them for you. And you do that with a new, well, still being decided, but one thing I propose is that you'll use a new track method and you'll wrap your render calls or your set state updates inside of it. So we're going to do that. We'll come back over here. Let's see, like, make this a little better. Handle button click. Inside of our handle button click method, we're going to use a track method from interaction tracking, which is, again, this is not published to NPM or anything. This is just a local build from a branch of React I have. But if you're interested in playing with it, it's all on GitHub, and I can put links in the description of this live stream when it's done. But here we go, and we'll say loading movies is what we'll call this interaction, and then we'll wrap it in a function, and there we go. So coming back to our app, let's see, loading, great. Okay, so everything seems to be working correctly. So now we're going to go into the profiler, and we'll click record, and I'll click initialize, and let all the stuff happen and finish, and then we'll stop. So now we have 3 renders like before for the disabling of the button, the loading placeholder fallback, and then finally the movie list. But you'll see that this interactions tab over here also has the interaction that we tracked. And this interaction, which took place about 7.4 seconds, not milliseconds. Obviously, I'm still playing with this. I haven't fixed that. But it took place about 7 seconds into my profiling, and then it resulted in a couple of renders. And you can see, actually, I guess, I don't know what 7.4 milliseconds means. That's a bug. But you can see it calls 3 renders. One of them was 2.5 seconds in, One of them was 3.6 seconds, and one of them was 4.6 seconds. And you can click on any of these renders in the interactions panel to jump to it. So hopefully this will be an interesting way to profile certain Flux actions or certain user clicks or form submits, parts of your app that are important, and correlate it with the timing information that the profiler gives you. And also, if you're running DevTools locally, you can get all of this in the UI. I'm hoping that this will be a good way to sort of gather timing information about your app. And the profiling build of React, well, profiling will be on by default in dev, and then we'll publish a special production profiling bundle, which is production mode. So it's not doing any of the slow dev warning validations that it does in dev mode, but it'll have the production timings enabled. So basically production with profiling timings enabled. So hopefully these two things together will give you the ability to collect some information in your applications in the wild. And yeah, I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I do have a couple of PRs posted. One of them is 13234, and I'll add a link again in the live stream. The profiling RFC itself is number 51, although I haven't added anything to it yet about interactions. That's sort of a new thing. And yeah, let me know what you think of the new DevTools feature that I'm playing with. And yeah, thanks for listening.